Good evening and a warm welcome to all the attendees today. I, Devjani Roy, legal advisor of Skyberg, on behalf of the organization, would like to welcome our today's speaker, Dr. Neelam Patil, and all the attendees for the webinar on the topic, The Process of Scientific Method and its Application. After the session is over, a feedback form link will be shared with you all in the chat box, and upon filling of which, you will receive the certificate of attendance. Now, I would like to introduce you all to our guest speaker, Dr. Patil, who is a qualified tech specialist with an extensive background in advanced management processes. Currently, she is a biochemistry adjunct faculty in ExiTest Academy, Italy, Natural Science Adjunct Instructor in Southern New Hampshire University, and senior lecturer in public health in Yesburg University. Dr. Patil has also worked as biochemistry senior lecturer and senior pathology instructor in Pune, India. Apart from this, she has an experience of being head of biology department, Ethiopia, from the year 2021 to 2022. She has completed her master's in science in health science, Pune, and her PhD in biochemistry in the year 2021. Dr. Patil has been associated as author for US-based Health and Wellness magazine, published several research papers in national and internal high-impact factor journals. She has also bagged Young Researcher Award by Institute of Scholars, Bangalore in May 2020. Now, I would request Dr. Patil to take over the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the introduction. Uh, I firstly welcome everyone in the session. A very good evening to all my dear students and everyone who is present in the session. I would like to, extend a warm, thank you to Skybug, which has given me the opportunity to speak today. I will not waste much of my time and your time because it's a Sunday. So I'll quickly start with the session. Since she has already introduced me, I would not repeat it. I'll quickly start sharing my screen. While the session is going on, I'll request everyone to please keep themselves on mute so that if at all there are any discrepancies, there are any doubts and queries, I'll be able to hear to everyone very clearly. So, so today we are going to understand about scientific method. This is a webinar as in it's going to be a quick 1 to 1.5 hour session wherein you will get to understand one particular topic in detail in a very descriptive manner. And I'll keep the session open for discussion post my talk is over. Meanwhile, if you have any queries, anything that you would like to address, discuss across, I would request you to please, make a note of that. And once the session is open for discussion, one by one, we will, try to keep more and more interactive discussions further. And I would really appreciate if you come up with more doubts and queries, because I always, as an instructor, keep telling this in my each session, whether it is a lecture or a webinar or a resource demonstration session. The more queries you have, I as an instructor understand that you have followed the concept in a better way. So questions are most welcome. However, just keep them to the end so that we can all address it together in terms of discussion, and we can interact in a better way. So, talking about the scientific method, as you can see on the screen, I'll be repeating the entire flow chart in detail stepwise as the session is going ahead. You can see the major steps which are involved in the scientific method. It consists of 6 steps, 6 basic fundamental steps in which how to conduct a scientific method. As I she has already Debjani has already given my introduction. These are my current affiliations where I'm working. I have over 8 years of work experience, both corporate and teaching, out of which teaching is my major area of interest, and I have been following it to the core. So, talking about scientific method, uh, I, as a researcher, selecting this as a topic is because I personally felt there was a dearth, there was a gap while I was doing my PhD, while I was pursuing my doctorate, in terms of understanding how to take up a particular topic. When you're doing your PhD or when you're doing any of your research, these days, even at school level, especially at the high school level, there's so much amount of robust projects, so many amount of discussions or assignments given to the student, and the student is lost. At times the student feels that let us just search something on the internet without having much information. Kind of half baked knowledge is present with the student, and with something present on the internet, just copy pasting somewhere from some particular place, putting it together and collating and calling it as a research is not something which actually gives us a particular conclusion. That is the reason I thought a lot of students need this particular concept to be clear, irrespective of your educational background, whether you are a commerce graduate, science graduate, or whether you are coming from a high school background, you're coming from a college level background, irrespective of your program, whether it is an undergraduate student or a postgraduate student, someone about to take up PhD. This is something which is very intricate and essential for everyone to understand. Even today, after completing my doctorate, I still feel every topic I cater to, every particular research interest I'm diving into, I need to understand from where I have to start. If the thought process is not clear, it becomes really difficult to take up any a topic and take it further to the end. You might leave it in between, you might have blockages, you might have an abrupt halt, but there are reasons for it. For this, we need to understand how to do a scientific research. And before we go ahead with scientific research, our fundamental for a scientific method needs to be clear. So the word scientific method itself means conducting a particular extensive deep research in a scientific manner. Whether it is a science topic or whether it is a non-science topic, we always have to have some kind of logic behind taking up a area of interest. So scientific method basically is a backbone to every science experiment, whether it is a in-house lab experiment or something which you're doing outside the laboratory. It is a methodological framework to solve problems, to come up with different solutions and determine answers in a stepwise format. We have to come up with answers, we have to come up with solution in a stepwise format. If we are not clear with what is the problem and what we have to identify, we will never be clear with how we are going to resolve a particular problem. So why do we need it? Firstly, when we come up with anything, now you can keep your thinking caps on as I'm progressing further with the session. Why do we need it? I have firstly asked a question, why? As a science researcher or as a science student, there's always an art or a knack of questioning why, when, how, etc., etc. So now we are first starting with the question why. You can correlate to any random topic that comes to your mind, whether it is a domestic level topic, something which is happening in our household on a daily basis, or something that we are doing at educational level in our academics. So why do we need scientific method? This is the first thing. As we go out, I'll just try to give an example. I'm not going to read everything that is present in the slide, it is quite self explanatory. Instead, I'm going to reiterate it in a different way, kind of paraphrasing, so that you all follow it to the core. So whenever we go to a shop or whenever we are going to a mall, we have a list of things to be purchased. If we don't have list of things, we will be lost. What is the first thing that comes to our mind? Why are we supposed to go to a mall? In the same way, when you are at home, when you are hungry, the first thing that comes to your mind is, why do you need to consume food? We need to consume food because our body requires energy. So the first thing is why, and then eventually the other questions will line up. In the same way, when you have any particular problem, any particular unsolved theory or a question which needs to be answered, the first thing is why. Is it going to really add relevance to your existing work? As a scientist, as a researcher, when we are pursuing a scientific research work, the first thing is why. Has anyone done it so far? Am I the first one to do it? If yes, then further things will align ahead. So, have you ever, had friends who attended the same event, but each one has given a different report? It is, quite natural that every person, every individual is going to have different opinion, different perspective. Not necessarily that, the perspective is right or wrong, but the way it is portrayed is always going to be different. In the same way, everyone, every research that is done, which will have a different angle to it. Say for example, if you study a particular topic, let us just stick to diabetes. Diabetes is an endocrine disorder. When we just type diabetes, what is it that we see on internet? We see thousands of articles across. Multiple articles will be present. Each article will have one unique factor in it. It is not going to be same in every article. So the way it is put forth is going to be different. We all know that diabetes is a metabolic disorder. It is something associated with insulin, but the way it is put forth in every research paper or in every educational note or in textbook, it is going to be a little different. The concept is going to be the same, but the way it is portrayed is different. This is something which we emphasize or which we focus on and term as scientific method. The way it is done is different, and that is the reason the knack of understanding why is very important. Whenever you take up a topic, we need to understand why it is done. Everyone has certain beliefs, certain values, perceptions towards any particular aspect in the life. While these differences are different, in a way it also makes us unique from each other. So this is the beauty of scientific method. The knack of questioning, the answers are going to be same, but in the end, the way, the pathway through which we are going ahead is going to be a little different. So it's going to be similar but not the same. Scientists over the centuries, over the decades of extensive research in different ways, have faced this problem. They have come with a conclusion, and that is the reason they have created a systematic methodology to conduct research, and this is something which we term as the scientific method. Now, this is just an example that is given here. I'll just explain it. Those who want, feel free to read it across. Say, for example, it is very late night and your mom has already asked you to go to sleep, but you want to read something, something which is, very important for you. Let's, just assume that you have an exam tomorrow and you want to read something really important that your faculty or your teacher has shared. But since it is very late, your mom has already switched off the lights. The bedroom lights are already switched off. Because if you keep your mobile phone open to read it, the light will go across. What have you done? You have taken your bedsheet on your face. Now, the next problem, I'm just trying to, show the problem area. Now the next problem is, how are you going to read something which is present on the mobile? If with one hand you have to adjust and balance the bed sheet, with other hand you are somehow trying to hold your mobile phone, but you need a little more light so that you can read it in a proper way. Now for this, you try to turn on a flashlight. While you're turning on a flashlight, the light which is there is eventually becoming dim, and then it shuts off. Now again, boom, you're not able to read anything. There's a problem that has occurred. Now what do? The next thing is, you try to change the battery, because there's less of energy left within the flashlight. The battery is died off. Now you're adding battery to the flashlight. Once you add it to the torch, what happens? It is again lighted up. Now your problem has solved and you are back to reading. So your problem was the flashlight not working. You wanted to read something in the dark. You wanted to actually also hide it from your mother, and these problems were answered by a certain solution after a while. So firstly, because you needed it, you have actually gone an extra mile and given a thought to it, that how am I supposed to do it. So basically, this is how at every step in our life we are already involving some part of scientific method. It's just that every time we don't think from that perspective while we are doing it, whether it is at domestic level, whether it is someone who is aware of scientific method, or someone who is completely new to this particular topic. We are actually dependent for solving major of our problems, a lot of our problems, in a tactical manner. I hope you all are following it. If not, then we are going to discuss it for better understanding eventually. So did you understand, without even realizing, you have come up with a particular step, that okay, I have to adjust the bed sheet with one hand, I'm keeping the flashlight on with another hand, and then since the flashlight has already died off, I'm already changing the battery so that I can get back to my work. So this is how we identify a problem, and then we come up with a solution. This is something which is already explained, so I'm not going to read it. We are going to further deep dive into other aspects of scientific method. Meanwhile, stepwise, I will request each one of you to have one particular research problem or a research question in your mind. Every time I'm explaining each step in detail, you can try to correlate to what I'm speaking, because what the scientific steps involved will require one example. Verbally I'm going to give one example, but if it doesn't suit your relevance, the background from which you're coming, you can select any topic of your choice and try to correlate to it. So let's just begin with this. As I mentioned, these are the major 6 steps for conducting scientific method. First is purpose, that is why. If we don't know the purpose, we will not, further follow what are the steps ahead. As mathematics, as physics, as chemistry, the same way, each of these steps are to be followed to its core in the same chronology. We can't start with experiment directly, we can't start with conclusion, we cannot start with direct research. We need to follow each of these steps one by one in the same chronology. One first thing is purpose, then research, we also call it as review of literature or literature review. Then next is hypothesis, followed by experiment analysis. We can call it data analysis, statistical analysis, or plain analysis. It depends what type of analysis it is. And lastly, it is conclusion. As I said, purpose is basically identifying the problem area. Firstly, we need to identify what is the problem area, what is the question behind which we are finding an answer. Next is the research topic. We need to know what is the research topic. Once we know the question, we will next identify what particular topic is to be conducted research on. Research means you have to break. If you don't follow any of the word directly, you just break the word in two parts. Research, something which is already been searched. Diabetes, diabetes is something which is already been searched, researched, reviewed, extensively worked upon across the globe by different scientists in different way, but there is still scope of more and more research. The way we say rewrite, the way we say revision, the same way we are using the term research. So I'm emphasizing on this word so that your fundamental basics for research is much more clear. So we are researching on the topic. More and more amount of review of literature is required. Review of literature or literature review is, we need to understand what all topics have been already covered, in what way our topic has been already explained by different scientists, authors, researchers across the globe in the latest time. Say for example, today if I got an assignment of just doing a study of diabetes. People call, people in India are basically termed as, India is termed as a diabetic capital, almost the third diabetic capital across the globe. Why is it termed? So did you understand why? The first thing is state the purpose, identify the research problem. Next is, what is the next step? I'm going to study on why India is called a diabetic capital. based on the number of people, based on the age group, based on the range in which, people are suffering from diabetes, how frequently people are, diagnosed with diabetes, are people getting cured of diabetes. So there are a lot of things which I am already covering up while I'm doing my research. So this is known as collection of lot of literature, so that I read extensively and then identify what is the small thing on which I can work upon. If something is already studied, done, I need not do it in the same way again. That is not going to add anything much to the knowledge bank of the readers. Say, for example, we all know the spelling of diabetes. I'm not going to repeat it in the same way. Instead, I will, talk about type of diabetes, how it is, uh, how it is causing more and more trouble and concern to the elderly population, how the younger generation is more prone to it. So I'm trying to find different facets so that I can talk about diabetes in a novel way, in a unique way. So this is something which I can do based on my extensive research. The next thing is hypothesis. Now I have already studied a lot of things, so something comes to my mind. Say, for example, we build upon some judgment, some assumption based on what we have studied, based on what we have experienced. I'll just give you a non scientific example. You are walking to school. Say, for example, I'm assuming each one of you is a college going student. You're going to college for continuous 5 days in a week. You are visiting a library, but you don't find book of your choice for 5 days. You are constantly pestering the librarian, you're persuading the librarian that please, let me, get this book, please avail this book. But the librarian is helpless, that book is not available. A request is raised, but after 5 days, what happens? Your patience level is breaking off. You are already used to, getting a no. So on the seventh day, say for example, from Monday to Friday, you have visited a library, you have got a turn down request. Your librarian was not able to provide you the book of your choice. And now, on the next week, in the next week, when you're going on a Monday to the same library, the librarian is ready with the book. However, you don't walk up to her, him or her. Why? Because you have made an assumption in your mind that maybe for 5 days she couldn't provide. Now I think there's no chance and no hope of the book being available. Let me just not ask. Instead, I'll ask to a friend. So what have you done? You have, created a hypothesis. It is not a question, it is a statement that you are having. It is something that you have already assumed in the back of your mind based on 5 days of your experience of getting a turn down in your request. On the seventh day, when you visit the college library, you don't go and, talk up with the librarian because you feel maybe you will never get the book at the library. Now let me just ask other ways to my friend. So, this particular assumption that you have made is based on some background research, some background experience. In the same way, while you're doing your research, based on what you're reading, you will come up with one statement in your mind. Say, for example, diabetes. I have already mentioned diabetes is a capital, getting a capital in India. It is having many cases occurring in the India. So this is something which you have already come up, and now you have already stated it that diabetes is the third capital in India. Now you will start experimenting, you will start testing it in the next step. As we proceed further in the next step, we talk about experiment. Experiment basically is, uh, you try to test, you try to cross check, you try to, deal with what is going on in what way. Let me just cross check, let me just, test it in the lab, let me just get the data, different types of figures, different types of sheets, worksheets which are available, the latest statistics about diabetes within India, at state level, at city level, across the community. Let me have a gender wise distribution. So we are trying to, narrow down our research in different fortes. The next thing is analysis. Based on what you have collected, the data on, whatever you have collected, you're trying to analyze the data. It can be a quantitative analysis, it can be a qualitative analysis. We are going to talk about it in detail, but I thought let me just, verbally express whatever things and whatever terms are. So eventually, as we go ahead, you will try to, correlate to what exactly which step means. We're trying to analyze the data, and lastly, we come to a conclusion. Without proof, there's no scope of conclusion. So, we need to find a proper, sturdy proof or an evidence to substantiate what we are talking about. So, this is how the steps are, calculated. This is how we stepwise go ahead. So, let us talk about the purpose. State the problem you're attempting to solve. We are trying to focus on, whichever problem we are attempting to solve. So firstly, you have to write it down. We have to write it down either in your notebook or either in your, if you have a whiteboard or a blackboard at your place, it's better that you jot it down. The sole purpose is to write. The more emphasis I put on writing is, if we don't write, we will forget what is the question to which we are finding an answer. So we need to find the problem question, we need to identify it and make a note of it. Once we have done, we have to be very specific and avoid broad statements. We already know on what problem we are going to, talk about, and we have to be specific to that particular problem area and focus on the same problem. Example, broad statement. In what conditions do plants grow best? Uh, I'll request the participants to please keep themselves on mute, so that while I'm talking, I don't find a little disturbing noise in the background. So, this statement is very general. In what conditions do the plant grow? Plant can grow in any condition, irrespective of whether it is going to grow in different conditions. But we don't know which plant we are focusing, which area, which geographical location are we focusing. So, this question is basically incomplete. To have a complete idea of our, problem, we need to identify which is which is the question. uh, can someone please thank you. So the broad statement here is, in what conditions do the plant grow? We don't know which plant it is, which climatic background currently is going on, which is the geographical location. So there are a lot of ifs and buts. The question is incomplete. If the question is not complete, we won't be able to solve it ahead. So just to be very specific, what is the next thing that is mentioned? Do bean plants. So now the focus is on a bean plant. So we know what type of plant it is. Does it grow better in direct sunlight, indirect sunlight, or shade? So we have expressed the climatic condition, which is essential. We have given a choice, and now we have also given a name to the plant. You can keep any plant of your choice or any question of your choice in this. The only sole purpose of writing this as an example is, you understand the question has to be complete. So, whenever a question comes to your mind, try to complete the question in its complete entity. This statement has narrowed down the problem to one plant, one factor. We have to select from one factor based on all the experiments and trials which go on. As I said, the next step is literature review. After stating your problem, we are going to read more and more extensively about the same problem across multiple books, journals. We'll try to attend conferences, workshops, seminars, sessions given by, people who are expert in that particular problem area. Say for example, if you are interested in diabetes, you will try to visit a diabetologist, try to interact with a doctor, get to know more about this particular metabolic condition, read more about latest articles, health magazines, try to attend conferences which focus more on this particular condition. So, in a way, you're trying to create a knowledge bank or a knowledge pool related to your topic so that you get to know what are the latest advancements which are happening in this particular field. The process of collecting lot of educational material related to one area of interest to solve our problem is basically termed as a literature review. We can call it research, we can call it review of literature, we can call it extensive literature study. There are a lot of synonyms which we use, but essentially it is the same thing. After stating your problem, it is important to have an extensive study on the topic, which we call as literature review. This allows us to frame an intelligent, a logical hypothesis. See, basically, we are going to come to hypothesis. Hypothesis is not something right and wrong. However, there should be a basic logic behind drafting a hypothesis. Without this logic, we cannot move further. It should contribute towards successful completion of your research. It shouldn't give you a block or a pause in an abrupt manner. So, if you ask me as a researcher, I will never say that hypothesis is wrong or right. It's not about wrong or right. It's about the way hypothesis will contribute in your completion of research, whichever task that you take up. Document all your findings which you're, studying. Say, for example, you have read 10 articles, 20 articles, 3 books, 5 books. Whatever take home message that you find from each of these articles, you have to make a note of it, that okay, this is something which article A is talking about, article B is talking about this. While you read each of your article, at the end, especially the research articles, if I have to emphasize on, at the end you will always find a small loophole or something which is not being done by the author. They usually mention it that this was our aim, these were our objectives, however we couldn't find answers to this due to time paucity, we couldn't explore so and so area. So what is it? You are getting a fill in the blanks. There's still more scope for research in the same arena in a different way. So read the entire article, you will get a take home message, how the research was done, what were the steps involved, and you will also get a loop on which you can work upon. You can use a variety of sources, books, web pages, newspaper articles, journals, blogs. Of course, I will recommend, do not take any information directly from Wikipedia. It's an open source website or a platform, so it can be edited by anyone and everyone. So the source of reliability is a little questionable. So try to take, your content from a reliable source. As I have mentioned, Nature, Elsewhere, PubMed, Medscape, if talking about, the health related platforms, these are quite recommended, journals. Science Direct, Willy, from which you can take up, articles for a better review. There are a lot of open access platforms from which you can take articles for your review. Coming to the next thing, state the problem or the question. We need to identify which problems are there. Develop a clear statement defining the problem. Make sure that your problem is to the point, precise. Your problem identifies the relevance of choosing your topic. You can have your problem statement in a question form or a statement format. Write down all possible information that you already know. As I said, you have to make a note of everything possible that you have seen. Do extensive research in the books on the topics that you're investigating. You have to do a lot of research. It might happen at times you feel that you are reading the same content repetitively. However, there will always be something new to offer by each author, by each scientist in each of the journals which you are reading across. So, until and unless you feel that you have covered and given complete justification to your literature review, do not stop it. This is what I will recommend. Ideally, if you're doing a literature review, I will advise, try to study, try to read and do extensive literature review on educational content which is available on different scientific platforms, at least from the time you're doing research to 5 to 7 years back. You need not go much beyond 7 to 8 years, because it's going to be quite redundant data, or the information will not be that reliable. There's a lot of more research done in the same area. So I'll recommend at least 5 to 7 years old data should be referred. Starting from the latest, say for example, when you search something, try to focus on articles which are published in 2023 on priority the same month which is going on, say for example March. Then go behind till 5 to 6 years at least. I'm sure there will be complete apt information you will get in the past 5 years data set whichever you refer. Try to interact with experts, subject matter experts, your faculty members, someone who has more interest in the same area. uh, with my experience, if I have to talk about, while I was doing my PhD, what I used to do is, while I'm reading the articles, people who have published the article, usually their email ID or contact details, the basic email ID usually used to be available. If not, you can try to find the same person on LinkedIn or any of the professional platform. LinkedIn is something which I'll recommend, and try to get in touch and brainstorm your ideas, or try to schedule maybe a small one-on-one call so that you get more information on how the research was done. They normally write a small thing, for correspondence please contact. So for correspondence, usually it is the first author. You get the author affiliation and the basic contact details. Email ID usually is available, so that you can get in touch with that author. Try to get as much as possible information, clarify your doubts and queries. Of course, while you're getting in touch with such people, have a set of questions instead of going directly and asking something from scratch. Have a set of questions ready, and then you can approach people. You will find some answer to your question, some guidance, some direction to which you're going further. Coming to the next, third step is hypothesis. So, as I said, hypothesis is a scientific guess, an assumption, which we call as a educated guess or a logical guess about the outcome of your experiment. Not necessary it is going to be right. However, it's a logical guess based on your observation, based on your research. You have come up with a hypothesis. Your hypothesis has to be a statement. Ideally, it shouldn't be a question. You need to be firm, either this side or that side. It should only state what you think about your results. You cannot confirm that this is 100% or 200% sure that this is something that is going to happen. You just have to state it, because many times hypothesis can be defied and we can move further as well. For example, bean plants will grow better in direct sunlight. So earlier we had an example which stated a question: bean plants will grow in direct, indirect, or a shady area. But now I have selected bean plants will grow better in direct sunlight as compared to indirect or a shady place. So I've chosen one out of the three options in terms of climatic condition. It is understood that your hypothesis is an educated or a logical guess. So you cannot say I think that or I believe that. You are not permitted to start your statement, your hypothesis with these words. It is just going to be a plain statements. You can use words like if, then. It has to be as short as possible just to avoid complexity. As I said, there is no harm in, hypothesis being completely wrong or right. You Once you fix on a hypothesis, it doesn't require to be changed. Guessing incorrectly or not moving towards your hypothesis is not what we are looking at. It's completely fine. All we need is just a statement towards which we have an idea or we have a thought process. Once we have confirmed with hypothesis, based on the hypothesis, we try to find experiment, we try to find steps to test our hypothesis. Whether the hypothesis is right or wrong, we are trying to test this particular statement either in a lab or outside a lab. It depends on what topic you have chosen. It is very important to list and have all the equipments, all the apparatus, all the list of requirements before you conduct the experiment. So if it is a survey, you need to have a questionnaire. If it is a research, a lab based test, you need to know which laboratory is best for your experiment. Many times, usually in a wet lab, that is in a, from a biology perspective, if I have to talk, at times a lab is not equipped with microbiology equipments. At times a lab is not equipped with molecular biology requirements. So many times, apparatus, starting from apparatus to the solution, each and everything needs to be in place before you start your experiment, or else it is pointless. I'll just give you a very basic non scientific example. Before we start cooking in a kitchen, what is the first thing that we do? We make sure that we have all the ingredients in place. If there are few ingredients which are missing, it is going to hamper the taste, the quality, and the outcome, the product, the final cooked vegetable or whatever that you're cooking. It is going to hamper it. So this is something which we need to keep in mind at the same time while you're doing your experiment in a lab. Precise measurements, equipments which give appropriate measurements. We need to be sure of safety concerns, make sure all precautions are taken in a proper way. This is something which is required for the researcher's personal safety and also for smooth conduct of the experiment. So since it is, something from lab related, from a lab perspective, safety to avoid hazards and a smooth conduct of experiment, all these aspects need to be kept in mind. As you can see, this image is just for explanation. You can see someone doing something in a lab. Both of them are having an eye gear. If I have to go much in detail, there's something known as a lab coat, there's something known as gloves. All of these things also need to be present. This is something which is still missing here. You cannot bend while some solution is being tested in a lab. There are chances that it can be volatile. The glass which is used can be brittle because of the chemicals, because of the heat impact. So there are a lot of things which can happen in a lab and one has to be prepared. This, why are we emphasizing on all of this? So that the time that we have invested in conducting experiment is utilized productively. If we go to a lab, if we conduct an experiment with half baked information, with incomplete set of apparatus, with not so good quality solution, we will not have the desired outcome that we are looking at. Needless to say, we have to repeat the entire experiment again. So these are few things that we have to keep in mind. If your experiment is non laboratory related, you need to have a proper idea of how you're going to conduct the experiment. As I said, if it is a quantitative study, maybe you have a questionnaire ready. Your questionnaire has to be foolproof. It should be without errors. Make sure it is without spelling mistakes. It is already been, cross checked and verified, validated by your guide, mentor, whomsoever. If it is a quantitative sorry, if it is a qualitative research, if you are looking forward to interact with people to get their views about, make sure you have taken appointments, you have blocked their calendar, you have informed them either on call or email, and then you visit people to have an interaction. If you directly barge in anyone's office without knowing whether the person is free for you or no, what will happen? The person might say, I have another commitment, so I won't be able to attend. I'll just give you an example. Today we all are meeting because we knew that 26th March, this time, you're going to have a session on so and so topic. Because I'm aware of it, I can give a session. Because you are aware of it, you could attend the session. So what is it? Mutually taking consent of either of the from both the parties, then we could make sure that this session actually happened. The same way, while you're doing your experiment, if it is a interaction, if it is you're looking forward to complete a survey or a questionnaire, or you're looking forward to interview people, you need to have prior appointment, or you need to give a intimation, a formal notice that you're coming and you're going to take maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever time that you require. If a prior consent, if a prior intimation is not given, end of the day, the purpose will stay unsolved. You will have more time to wait. Eventually, the time frame for you to complete your research will also be extended. So these were a couple of things which I thought you should know from an experiment perspective, whether it is a lab related work or whether it is a non lab related work. Going in detail, there's something known as variable. We are going to talk about it superficially. Let us not, go in too much of detail, because that's going to be too much of download for you all in just one session. If I have to talk about this topic, scientific method, precisely this is a subject which we call as research methodology in PhD. So normally this subject takes around 60 hours if you have to properly invest your time to understand. Uh, Coming to experiment, write a procedure, write a stepwise. You should have a flow chart in which you are going to devise how you conduct an experiment. Variables basically is anything that can affect, that can have an impact on your experiment. It can be in a positive way, it can be in a negative way. There are two major types of variable: dependent variable and independent variable. We will be talking about both of them in detail. Independent variable is something which is controlled, manipulated by a person who is conducting research. Assuming you have a hold of this particular variable, it is a factor. It can be anything, it can be X factor, A factor, whatever factor that whatever alphabet that you want to name. I'll not make it much complex. It is a factor which can be manipulated, which can be changed, altered as per the researcher's convenience. Next is dependent variable. the variable that is measured by the experimenter. So the person who is doing research is dealing with two types of variable. Lastly, there is a control group. There's a constant group, the group that is not expressed, which is not showcased openly to the independent variable. What will happen if the control group is expressed to the independent variable? It will constantly keep on changing, manipulating. Say, for example, I'm a researcher. I want to prove that diabetes is creating a havoc in our country. I will try every possible article, every possible research and experiment that I'm doing should be in favor of what I want. But that is not essentially how you conduct a research. If you keep on, proving just for the sake of proving, that is a biased way of conducting research. So these are two, this is just a chart which shows the features of both the variables, independent variable and dependent variable. Independent variable can be manipulated, it can be changed as per convenience. Dependent variable has to be measured, so there is precision. Independent variable focuses on the cause. Why is it existing? It is normally present from the start, so that's the reason it is written before. Independent variable, since the experimenter, the person who's doing research, is already aware of, is focusing on input. It focuses on what you do. So this is the first thing. Normally, independent variable is first while doing an experiment. The next thing is dependent variable. It is measurable. It talks about precision. Effect. So it's the after effect after doing the study. Next is output. That's the product or the end result of your experiment. It talks about what happens. Independent variable, it talks about what you're doing. Dependent variable, it is talking what has happened. I'm sure if the topic is, explored for the first time, it will take a little time for you all to understand. But again, both the types of variable, independent and dependent, are a must and they are present in the experiment. So this is just an example to make things a little easy. A group of students were given a short course of, speed reading. Say, for example, you all are, those who are attending, assuming you all are a group of students who have been given something to read. You have to read it in a speedy manner. The instructor is wondering if a monetary incentive would influence the performance. Say, for example, the instructor has said that students who read this much, you will get so and so amount of money. Half of the students were offered $5 for obtaining certain level of performance in their test, and the other half they were not offered any money. Now, people or the group of students who are offered money, they will have better results because there is a bias factor. They have been bribed with some monetary benefit. Now, those who have not been offered any money, they are considered as a control group. There is no change. They are not dependent of any of these factors. And what we are
And
studying,
what we are studying is
dependent variable.
dependent variable.
Performance on a reading test, this is the variable that can be measured by experiment. So we are comparing between independent variable and the control group. So those students who were offered money, they are bound to perform more fast because they have a monetary gain out of something, some task that is given to them. Unlike the control group, it is going to be stable and constant. They will go at their own natural pace. and students who are reading will be assessed under dependent variable. So this is how the study goes. You can go ahead with multiple ways. This is another example that I have taken up. A researcher is trying to study effect or impact of sleep on aggression, different types of moods. So I have taken up aggression. So if there is aggression, sleep is getting affected. There are people who are sleeping 6 hours a night, some people sleep 3 hours a night, and there are people who sleep as much as they want. The more the aggression, the more impact, the more adverse impact on sleep. So this is something which shows observation. One factor is aggression, other factor is sleep, and how this aggression keeps on changing. So aggression happens to be the independent variable, and it is having its impact on the constant group, thereby giving results on the dependent variable. As I said, letting some people sleep only for 3 hours. If there is aggression, it will keep on changing. The more the aggression, the more will be impact on the sleep. Those people who don't have any kind of aggression, they will keep on sleeping on and on. So now what is the next step? This is the second last step in our research. We are trying to analyze, record the results of your experiment. It can be either in the form of a data table. It can be in the form of a chart, a graph, any of the choices of yours. The only thing is, instead of having information on an Excel sheet or having complex bar graphs which has too much of data, try to separate it in multiple graphs. Single parameter on one graph, which will be more ideal for you to express the result as an outcome, rather than having one graph with lot of results together. It's going to be too much congested and difficult to decipher what exactly is the outcome. So I will not say a graph has to be with just one result, but at least two or three results minimum, not more than that, or else it will be difficult to make identify what exactly the researcher is talking. So organizing data is very important. There will be data sets which look better in a pie chart. They have to be placed in a pie chart. There will be data sets which will be clear in a graph format. There will be sets of data which will look better, which will help to identify and understand information, express it in a smoother pattern, maybe in a graph format. So, based on what is the type of data, how easily it can be interpreted by the readers and the researcher, one has to identify how to plot the information. This is an art in itself. Take thorough and accurate measurements during the entire experiment. Make sure that this makes your data valid. There shouldn't be any chance of, I'll say, there shouldn't be any chance of biasness. Find associations and trends in your data. Then you can try to correlate with what your hypothesis is stating. It might happen that you have partially satisfied or justified what your hypothesis is stating, or you have completely, proved your hypothesis. Make connections about your experiment and make sure that you interpret the results. Now, how can you gather your data? As I said, make observations. Any use of the senses, whatever you require to gather the information, qualitative observations, anything that you see, smell, touch. This is something which you can't measure. Quantitative observation is something that you can measure. So it is going to be in a number format. Either it is a percentage format, either it is just a numeric format, but something that you can measure. So normally, data that is recorded by surveys, data that is recorded by questionnaires, by polls. There are different types of poll which goes on, that this many percentage of people have this opinion, this many percentage of people have another opinion. Normally you can come across on LinkedIn very often. Say for example, a question is posted and you give your vote. The moment you give a vote, there's a number generated along with a percentage sign. This shows that the information is in a quantitative format. Both qualitative and quantitative data can be interpreted. However, qualitative observations are those which doesn't require a number. They are not dependent on numerics. Quantitative observation is dependent on numerics. It's a mandate to have numerics. A research article or a research, work that you are doing might have both qualitative and quantitative types of data or either of it. There is nothing as optional that if you're doing a research, it only requires qualitative type or quantitative type. It can have both together as well. How can you analyze? I've already expressed this. You can create graph, bar graph, line graph, tables, pie chart. It all depends on how efficiently you can showcase the results. The sole purpose of, determining or writing or plotting it on these, mathematical figures is it should be in a proper interpretive format. If it fails to give information or provide information, it's not serving the purpose. How can you draw conclusion? Answer the following questions in the paragraph. Does your result or data support your hypothesis? If yes, how? If no, why? What are the different ways you can improvise on your data? What would you do in a different way if you have to repeat the experiment? It does happen, as I said previously, while you are reading the entire article, at the end there is always, further scope for doing more research mentioned. So while you're doing your entire, experiment, you always think that, okay, if I would have done in this way, maybe I would have got results in the either way. So you can always think and ponder upon, and then essentially, if you feel, you can again redo the entire work. Again, it is not questioning on the way you have done, it is giving you further scope of improvement. If I have to again give a non scientific example, let us get back to our kitchen. While you're cooking anything, not necessarily every time you will follow the same steps of adding the spices. The sequence of adding spices will also have some small or major impact on the way it is going to taste. So, this is a very important while you're doing your experiment as well. Every step that you have followed, if you feel after deriving all the results that maybe if this step would have been conducted in this way, things would have been a little better. So we are constantly in the phase of learning towards being more and more efficient. As I said, one thing is theory and one thing is law. Theory is basically an explanation, a detailed understanding which tries to correlate association between hypothesis and observation. Law, law as in something that has, that is in reality a summary of lot of experimental results and observations. Theory supports by repeated trials, list of experiments, extensive work that is done in the past. You try to confirm and affirm that, okay, this is how it has to be done. Law, since it is at actual, it is actually telling how to do things in reality, in present. Theory always has further scope for prediction, further scope for experiments. Theory tries to state why it happens. There's a why which is answered. While if we talk the other way, it only tells what has happened. It does not explain why. We have to think why it has happened. Again, going back to the theory. So, this is the thin line of difference that we need to identify. Coming to conclusion, Compare the hypothesis to the experiments, whatever conclusion that you have taken. Try to prove it or disprove your hypothesis. Do mention if there were any chances of errors, how many percent of error has already occurred, did it actually impact on your conclusion in a very adverse way. If not, then what actually happened and what went wrong. So this I have already mentioned. How can you draw conclusions based on the results, based on the data? You can try to draw conclusion that the numbers or the qualitative data is talking about this, so I feel as a researcher the experiment being done shows these things as outcome. Again, no one is going to judge on the outcome, on the conclusion. The sole purpose of conducting research in a scientific method is to add more to the knowledge. We are no one to question about what happened in the conclusion. It is just a conclusion, that's it. It is something which is a end product. All we are doing is trying to make it efficient, better, and in a constant phase of improvising it further. Nextly, these are some questions which can be asked to the researcher. It can be self reflection questions. What are the different ways you can improvise on your data? What would you do differently if you have to repeat the experiment? So there has to be a small spike change. That is how we discuss. Say for example, while I started the session, I spoke about research is done in the same area. In diabetes you will find 1,000 different articles, but each article is going to be independent of other. You will find similarity, but it will not be exact copy of each other. Each author will try to contribute in a different way. This is what we focus on even in a conclusion. So basically, conclusion is you're stating the purpose, you're reiterating, you're repeating the sole reason why the research was conducted. You explain why these results are, going to benefit and leave a further scope of research for the next researcher who reads the article. You consider whatever, loopholes that are happened. So you are accepting that no research is going to be 200% or 110% perfect. It will have some minor changes which could have been a little better. So you are expressing this so that next person who does it will not repeat the same error. As an instructor, I always tell, do errors, make mistakes, but they shouldn't be the same one. You should learn from previous mistakes so that it doesn't leave scope for blunder. Blunder is what? You are doing same mistake again and again. One person as a researcher needs to learn from mistakes that you do in a research work. Same is applicable everywhere. So we need to have a self introspective error analysis of what has happened, what has gone wrong. It can be at a minor level, it can be at a major level. Whatsoever, identifying, documenting is very important. If we don't acknowledge it, it might happen that the same error will occur again. So, as I said, this is the image which I have already shared earlier. These were the steps which you need to keep in mind. These are the 6 steps, fundamental 6 steps. If you are into research, if you are a student who are focusing on any assignment, any project, dissertation, thesis, you can just have such small charts, print out and keep it in your room wherever you are studying, so that this can help you to understand how to conduct a research. This is just a quick recap of what we have studied. I have one more slide. We do have time, so I can just quickly run over. As I said, a recap for scientific method: ask a question to yourself, do proper background study, construct a hypothesis, get it tested with an experiment, working procedure: is it working or no? If yes, move further with analyzing of data, draw conclusions, just check if hypothesis is matching or no, and then lastly you have to communicate the results. This step needs to be followed to the core. You can also write it in a format. This I have taken from the internet. uh, you can just make a note of all of this. The more you write, the more it will give you a clear idea of how you are doing it, because things are in the head. Until and unless we don't have to showcase, we won't be clear. Say for example, today I've come for a session. If I keep on verbally telling again and again, I know what I'm talking, but you all will not be able to relate to it, for which I had to prepare a presentation, I had to show it to you. So things, visuals become much more easy, and they have a better impact on learner, on researcher. So try to have visuals in front of you. Again and again you can't open a presentation, so it is ideal that you have something written with you, which you can keep on, checking whenever you are doing your research. So these are a couple of things. You will get a lot from the internet, so I will not emphasize on, reiterating it again and again. Just this is just a chart which focuses on how to do and the steps of scientific methods. Let me just share one more slide with you all. This is a smaller one. Let us talk about the outcome, case study, or case study of a research method, how to design and evaluate research. Firstly, we are writing in one sentence. This is just a revision, so you know what you have studied so far. You're writing it in one sentence. You're writing it in a definition format. There are different types of case studies. Whenever you're studying any particular research topic, make sure that you study what all things have been done in the past, maybe in a format of a case study, because it gives you end to end solution, the entire journey of similar research work that has been done. It can be a qualitative research, it can be an individual research done as a compilation. Extensive data collection can also be a possibility. There are three types of case studies. I'll not go in the intricacies because this will, create much more complex aspect, but this is one of the major application of scientific method. As I said, I will be explaining about scientific method. We are done with the six major steps of understanding. One of the major application of scientific method is a case study. While you go through a case study, you will see all the steps are being applied to the core in the same format. It can be an intrinsic study, instrumental study, or a multiple study. Intrinsic study is an explorative study. It leaves further scope for, diving deep into the research. Again, it is at a very minute level. Say, for example, how a clock is dismantled and, collected again. Instrumental studies at a global level, so it will not always give you exact, I'll say, outcome. There's always a further scope for research. So the scenario in India about diabetes will not be the same maybe in Australia or New Zealand or any of the countries. Each country will have different way of putting forth diabetes as a condition. There are a lot of factors which will impact of about which will have an impact on diabetes as a condition. So while we are studying something about, we talk about from Indian scenario because we are now based in India. However, there will always be further scope at a global level. This is what instrumental case study focuses on. Collective studies like just, study, extensive study again and again. The limitations are, one researcher at one time. You are alone doing research in this particular area. If there are a lot of people together to brainstorm, you will have more scope to, identify ideas. So I think this is about case study as a very basic thing. I think I'm done with what I had to explain. If anyone has queries, anything to ask, address, please feel free to. Uh, I've taken a lot of time. Yeah, thank you so much for being attentive. If anyone has to ask anything, please feel free to. So we have one question: how to choose a dissertation or a research topic. So basically, it depends on your interest, based on the program that you're pursuing, whether it is an undergraduate program or a postgraduate program. Each program has a duration given to complete your project. So it depends on how you are deciding on. If it is an undergraduate project, usually they give around 3 to 4 months time. If it is a postgraduate project, normally in India they give a time span of around 6 to 7 months or maybe a year. But before when you know the duration, you have to understand the feasibility. Feasibility means one thing is you like, and other thing is, are you practically going to, you know is it practically possible for you to complete it? Say for example, I say I have interest to do study on nutritional disorders in rural area, but I am right now staying in a city. Is it possible for me to go and do the study? If not, then I have to slightly change my topic based on the feasibility. So it depends on your area of interest, how you select a topic. Once you have selected, you need to be well versed with all the basic fundamentals of that particular topic. Once you know that, you can decide that yes, I have done enough research and I'm confident to take up this topic so that I can answer the questions. I'll just give you an example of myself today. Today I can talk about scientific method because I have done this again and again for the past 5 years, 6 years. I have studied, I have implemented, I have explained, I have guided, and now I have that confidence to talk about it. The same way, you have to select a topic based on your interest, based on your individual contribution in terms of doing extensive study and literature review. Once you are thorough with that, you will be in a state to confirm that yes, I can do it. Because if tomorrow any of your instructor, any of your colleagues are asking you any question related to that, you should be in a position to answer it in a very fluent way, plus in a very apt way. I hope I have answered the question.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, I have a small question. I have completed my post graduation in biotechnology, like masters in biotechnology, but I am not able to decide whether I should do PhD from India or from foreign. So, ma'am, can you please guide me over it?
So basically, if I have to talk, I'll say it depends. There are a lot of factors. Identify if it is a foreign university, you have to identify uh, a primary, a scientific investigator who can assist you. If there is any person who is an expert in the same field where you want to go and pursue, you have to write an application to them, make sure that okay, they are interested, and then your application will get accepted. This is something in regards with the foreign universities. If it is India, you have to select based on the lab facility, based on people who are expert in that domain, and if you feel that everything is appropriate, you can go ahead. Talking about India, you always have a flexibility of choosing college, cross checking, going there physically, checking if everything is in place, whatever your requirements are, and then you can go ahead and select the university. But if I have to talk about the foreign university, we cannot, directly go cross check and again come back. It is economically not a viable option. So, normally for the foreign universities, what I recommend is go on the website, check the program instructors list who all are there, check their expertise, write to them on email your area of interest along with a cover letter, and take a revert. Normally they revert. At times it takes time. Again, it is a tedious effort. With cost, you have to keep in mind which universities offer, and then checking all of these parameters, you can decide on which university will be best.
And ma'am, one more small question, ma'am. Ma'am, I have heard about two types of PhD. One is academic PhD and one is industrial PhD. So, like as a master student, I have completed my masters in biotechnology. So, to
Yes.
which PhD, so which type of PhD I should focus, academic or industrial?
So ideally, as a biotechnology student, I'll focus. I mean, it's just a suggestion. I'll prefer more on a industrial background because biotechnology is a blooming field, especially at research level. So industrial PhD will be much more preferred. Industrial as in the lab related PhD. The wet lab PhD is something which I'm talking about. I have a few more questions. How to prepare proposal for PhD Viva? So normally for PhD Viva, you have a standard template. It roughly has to cover your entire journey. If it is a final PhD Viva, how did you select it? What are the results? What are the conclusions? What were the problems that you faced? So it should be a complete recap of whatever 4 5 years you have put on. Normally 4 years 5 years are more than enough. If the PhD is going beyond that, especially with the Indian scenario, you have to tell what were the loopholes, what were the hurdles, and then how did you overcome on it, and then create a presentation. So it roughly has to be between 70 to 80 slides. Again, I'll not give a limit. It again depends on your topic, and make sure you cross check or get a thumbs up from your guide or your mentor, the first primary guide. Research proposal, basically while you're drafting a research proposal, you need to understand uh, why you are writing the research proposal, what are the aims, what are the objectives, how are you going to complete it, what is the stipulated time that you're looking forward at, which lab facility, if within India, you're looking forward to complete it, and uh, also write the name of the people to whom you're going to send the research proposal. So it is a 1 to 2 pages exhaustive document. It shouldn't ideally disclose everything that you want to do, because there's a chance of intellectual theft. However, a basic methodology of doing the research should be involved in it. If I'm talking about someone has asked for Mumbai PhD, TIFR, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, it is one place which has a good scope for basic sciences. So biochemistry coming under basic science will be a good place for doing PhD. So ideally, as per the eligibility, botany, for botany, I think your again PhD area has to be botany. If not botany, you can check which exactly will be the courses in which you align. But talking about the Indian methodology and framework, they usually give PhD subject in the same subject in which you have done your masters, or try to find which all are the subjects you have pursued in your masters. And if your mark sheet is having more and more number of similar subjects, say for example applied botany, industrial botany, etc., etc., you can select one of the topics for your PhD. But try to select a area which gives you a broad scope for applying elsewhere, maybe if you're interested for a postdoctoral fellowship. So this is how normally you should select. But ideally, as per the Indian system, you have just a single area, that is the subject in which you have done your masters, you will continue your PhD in the same area. So for industries, I'll say you can get in touch with a lot of research centers which require JRF and senior research fellows. Normally, there's an exam, NET or SET. You can give the exam, at least for India. And once you clear that exam, usually these are government positions which keep on coming. Again, they are not confined to one location; they are across India. So you can check whichever research center. All you can do is you can just search research centers for biotechnology. You will get standard government centers, and over there on the website itself you will have the opportunity section where these openings keep on coming. They are contractual positions, but it's normally, based on my experience, once you enroll, uh, you know it keeps on going on, like after maybe a 1 year's project, some other project comes. So if you are eligible and your experience is relevant, they can pick you up for that particular position. So you start as a JRF, that is a junior research fellow, and you further continue as a senior research fellow. And based on your experience post your PhD, you get a scientist position as well. I'll have to check about clinical embryology. I'm not very sure, but Vellore Institute, I think it does have Vellore in Vellore. I'm not sure, but I think Vellore Institute, it has clinical embryology. Zoology PhD, I think almost every state university has zoology as a program. So if the program is there for bachelor's and master's, needless to say, they do have a doctorate program. So you can enroll in the same university. Almost each of the state university has, because it's a basic science course. Marine research, I think there is an institute in Mumbai. I'm not sure, but I think there's an institute in Mumbai for marine research. So I basically have a Bombay background, so I'm sure I'm not sure about the name, but marine research, it is there. You can check for marine research. Yes, I would love to have a webinar. That's not a problem. BARC. BARC again, there are a lot of competitive books which are available in the market. It's based in Mumbai, so you can study, but you have to have a more focus if it is BARC for physics. Physics is one of the basic science. I will advise, if you're doing PhD, uh, it depends on the type of study that you have chosen. If your research topic is based uh, on field, then you require more time, so I will advise for a full time. If it is a lab related research, then again it is a full time PhD that I'll recommend. But if you are a working professional, then ideally you should be going with a part time PhD. Part time PhD at times takes more time. You need to have your concepts ready and your framework ready. Normally, I'll say part time PhD also can be completed within 4 to 5 years, but you need to have your ideas in place. Normally, what happens is PhD students enroll and then they start from the scratch. Rather, if you're planning for a PhD, you should have a basic idea, okay, after this, what you're going to do. So, the way I explain scientific method, try to place everything in terms of planning, stepwise, what you're going to do. It might happen that things might not work in your favor the way you have planned, but at least you will have a rough layout of how you're going to take up things. Ethology, I'm really not sure this ethology as a area, so I'm sorry, I won't be able to guide on ethology. NIO, yes, NIO is based in Pune. It has a scope. NIO, it does take junior research and senior research fellow. It was quite active during the COVID time as well. Any more questions? I hope I have answered everything from the chat. Yes. Anyone? Any more questions? I firstly, I once again need to thank you everyone for attending on a Sunday evening. How to develop interest in research. I will advise, try to read more and more in your free time, instead of going through Netflix or any of the social media platforms. These days they have been more addictive for the student generation. So instead of that, I will advise, try to subscribe to scientific magazines, research journals. Some of them are free of charge. Whatever interests you, keep on reading it in your free time. The more you read, especially the more loudly you read, you can build on your vocabulary, and eventually you will have a clear idea of how things are going. Not necessary that you're going to do something actively in the same area, but the more you read, you will understand how things go, and how scientifically people have come up with different ways of solving problems, especially from research perspective. So if you have to generate research and interest, I'll recommend read more extensively in detail in your free time, and try reading and making a note of. The more you write, I'm a little old school type, so I'll say try to write more and more, that okay, these are the take home messages. I did not follow this. Ask to someone, whoever is there, an expert, maybe in your college or maybe in your community. Try to interact with people from the same like minded approach, so that you have a better idea of things.
Ma'am, one question.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, yes.
Ma'am, can you please help me with like how to apply for the industrial PhDs? Like, is it same as we apply for the academic PhDs, or is it something a different way?
The procedure is same. It depends from institute to institute. So what you can do is you can check the website of these government research centers. The websites, they have their opening that okay, we are usually PhD intake is on an annual basis. So every year, whatever time that intake is there, you will have to keep an eye on the website, and once it opens, you can start off. I will recommend just make bookmark all these research centers. Try to find one person of your contact in that particular research center professionally, and once you have a contact, try to get in touch with the person and ask the person whenever there is a PhD intake going on. You can just get in touch and get confirmed. So normally they do have an entrance test, so they put everything on the website.
Ma'am, can you please suggest me any of the website or any of the industry or research center?
Which area are you focusing on?
Generally, related to some food or like I'm open to all the area related to biotechnology.
So if you're talking about food, I can suggest ICMR. ICMR is one website. Again, ICMR has research centers across India. It's not just in one place. I think it has one in Delhi, or maybe somewhere in north. Another is in Bangalore. Some is also in the north. I think in the east. So ICMR has around 6 to 7 recognized research centers. So you can keep checking ICMR website. Location is not if it is not a constraint for you, you can keep checking the website, and whenever there is an opening, they tell. Normally it is a standard time for PhD intake in India. Normally they are active from February to April or maybe May. It doesn't go beyond that, but you need to check at individual level. I won't be directly knowing the exact dates, but it depends on your research interest. So that is what I said, you have to finalize or settle down on one interest, and then you can hunt on different centers. If you don't know which is your area of interest, it will be difficult to search, so you will be lost in it. Like, you might get an opportunity from 2 3 places and you will be confused which to select. So select in a very practical perspective which is the area that you can pursue, which is feasible for you from every perspective, and then you can hunt down and uh, just narrow down your choice. So I think I have already dropped my